aerobic training. So this continues the different types of training that athletes use to improve their performance. So you can see here with the anaerobic training, I'm going to look at 3 areas: developing the power through resistance training or / weight training, plyometrics, and also through short interval training. There is a bit of overlap here with what you've done in Core 2, so hopefully rather than giving you new information here, we're just sort of refreshing old stuff. So moving on there, obviously the duration is going to be a lot shorter than aerobic training, because when we're training anaerobically, we're training at very high intensity. So as you know from your work with the energy systems, we can't sustain high intensity work for long periods of time. So that's why that is less. So we're looking at shorter explosive movements that are building power and speed. And obviously power comes from the speed of movement. This is just some more information in regards to what sort of load, if we're talking resistance, what sort of load do you need to achieve power? Because you want the load medium to heavy. If it was just purely too heavy, then you would be losing the speed of the muscle contraction. So that would just be building strength. So remember, power is a combination of strength and speed. So here's what you're looking at: roughly 80% of your rep max, probably about 6 reps, do 3 to 5 sets. Speed is the key. You've got to do that speed. The speed has to be fast in order to achieve that powerful sort of stuff. So that's why the speed there is fast. And rest time, you're looking anything from 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the intensity and the duration that you go for. Now looking at how we would develop power through resistance or weight training, we look here at the formula for power. So force times the speed, so distance over time is the speed. So force is literally how strong are you, the speed is how quickly can you apply that strength. And we've got just a little example here: 2 people who can bench press exactly the same. So in terms of pure strength, we would say they're the same. But if we looked at power, because player A can only do it in 8 seconds, whereas player B can do it in 4, player B is twice as powerful because that person can move that force twice as quickly. So you equate that to sort of rugby union, a front rower and say outside centre. They may literally be able to bench press the same amount of weight, so they're the same in terms of strength in the chest, but you would think the outside centre would be a lot more powerful because they have the more explosive type strength about them, because they can move that weight a lot quicker. And just recapping here, so power is more important than absolute strength in most sports. Okay, now here's another example here, because even if players are slightly different strengths, if one player, you could be a little bit weaker but more powerful than a player who's just stronger, but you're not able to apply that strength with rapid muscular contractions. So generally power will dictate who comes out at the top in most games. So you can see here, just recapping again on the power gains with resistance training. And it also makes mention that you can also do plyometrics, which we're going to obviously look at with our next little point here. But that's the principles of the power training with, in particular reference to resistance or weight training. Now just looking at the speed, obviously we said for someone to be powerful, they need to be able to contract their muscles quickly. So in order to do that, you need to train to contract your muscles quickly. So that's why when you lift the weights, you lift them at a fast pace. So whatever you're doing when you're training for power is done at a fast, high intensity pace. That's as opposed to just pure strength. The speed of contraction in pure strength, if you're just training for that, may not be or will not be as quick as if you're training for power. Now here's just where you can, where speed can be enhanced in certain areas in particular sports. And you can see here different aspects of speed can be improved through different types of anaerobic training. So you're looking at a bigger number of sets but smaller repetitions. So obviously the repetitions are smaller because you're actually working at a very high intensity, because you're working at a high speed. So obviously with the higher intensity, you're going to need appropriate rest time so that you can ensure the quality. If you're training for speed, you're training pretty much at your max, so you're going to need significant rest time. And just here, throwing speed can be increased by throwing lighter objects and also using plyometric training. However, you don't want to go too light, because if you go too light, your muscles won't be trained to produce force with a heavy resistance. So if you just go training at with a light weight resistance at a really fast speed, that's not going to achieve the same as if you go training medium to heavy resistance with a fast speed. Okay, so you can't just say, well, I'm going to scrap all the weight so I can just train really fast, because there still needs to be an element of resistance to get decent training benefits out of things and therefore improve your performance. Plyometrics works on the theory that when a muscle group undergoes an eccentric contraction, there's actually a little elastic component of the muscle that stores a little bit of the energy produced when there's an eccentric contraction going on. Now, this little bit of energy can be used instantly to produce a concentric contraction. So what that does is actually enable someone to perform the activity of plyometrics. That's the theory plyometrics works on. So it's an eccentric contraction followed by rapid concentric contraction. And this stored energy can only be used straight away. You can't wait 10 seconds and then use it. You can't store it up for a couple of days and use it. You've got literally, quarter of a second to use it. So plyometrics is, again, short, sharp sort of activities. We've got some pictures here of some plyometric exercises. So in this instance, we would be looking at the quadricep. So he's stepping off the bench, and as he lands, his quadricep, so he's flexing his knees, and the muscle that's actually the agonist here is the hamstring. So the muscle we're working out, we're doing plyometrics for to improve the power of, is the quad. So you can see here his quadricep is actually lengthening. That's an eccentric contraction. And whilst it's doing that, there's a small little boost of energy in there, little spring boost of energy waiting to be used, which can be used as long as it's done straight away, which he's doing here. So literally he'd be jumping off the bench and jumping straight up into the air. All right, and that would be working the quadricep. There's just some more activities here. You can do a clap push-up, or let yourself go down and push yourself up. You can also do a clap push-up if you want to test yourself, but that puts a lot of stress on the wrist, so I personally wouldn't. Just some more here with a plyometric sit-up, and also just hopping side to side. Now, the last part of anaerobic training is a short interval training, generally done to, well, obviously not generally done, it is done to train the anaerobic energy systems. If you're training the ATP-PC, the duration is only going to be 10 seconds of maximal intensity, and you can see here that the rest period is roughly 30 to 60 seconds duration. There's your work-rest ratio, so if you work for 10 seconds, you'd rest for at least 30 seconds, so 1 to 3. And you need, that recovery time is okay because there's only a small amount of lactic acid being produced, and hopefully your ATP-PC stores would resynthesize. Well, that's going to roughly take 2 minutes for complete restoration of those. But because we're training the ATP-PC system, we're only going 5 to 10 seconds. And here's an example of a training session for the ATP-PC system, which they've classified that for a soccer player. Now, for the lactic acid system, you're going to be going for a period of probably 20 to 60 seconds because that's when the lactic acid system is at its highest usage. And the difference between training short interval for the lactic acid and short interval for the anaerobic ATP-PC system is the rest, because you're going to be producing a lot more lactic acid when you're doing short interval training for the lactic acid system. So you're going to need a little bit more rest to recover, to get that out of your system, to enable the quality of your training to be at its highest. And you can see here, the last point, this sort of training is very tough. So you can't just do it every session. It's very, very taxing, and not just physically but mentally as well. And here's an example of the lactic acid system, a training session, which you should copy into your notes. And that's the end of Stem 36, fellas. Thanks.